What's going on, folks? Eddie Carrington, Mayor of Flux City, and I want to bring to your attention one of the bigger RFPs that have come across my desk in quite some time. This is a 22-acre redevelopment opportunity in Detroit's northwest side, issued by the Detroit Economic Growth Corporation, and this is a pretty massive opportunity. This is a chance to reshape an entire community, but this is also one of the more challenging things to accomplish due to the size and scope and demand from the city of Detroit with regards to a team capacity, capability, and just the amount of acreage that they're looking to get redeveloped, not to mention the challenge of finding the right funding in order to put together a project that is fundable and you're able to in turn fill the number of gaps that you're going to have with a project such as this. But let's get into it. Let's check this out, and maybe this is something that you and your team is thinking about putting a play together for. But at the very least, I want to make sure that you're aware of this opportunity because it's a pretty massive one.
Hi, I'm David Howell, Vice President
Dave?
of Real Estate Services for the Detroit Economic Growth Corp. Welcome to the future of Rogell Park, where Detroit's landscape is transforming Detroiters in the next generation. The historic former golf course is undergoing a transformation that will create spaces for both community.
Did you see how large that site is? I mean, that is a literal neighborhood. That's massive, right?
Landscape is transforming Detroiters.
Another thing to point out is the location, and really good location for the right concept.
In the next generation. The historic former golf course is undergoing a transformation that will create spaces for both community and enjoyment and economic growth. As a result of the 2018 Grand River Planning Study, just under 120 acres, the site has been divided into two unique parcels, each designed to bring.
Wow. Okay, so 22 acres. The 22 acres are really on the outskirts of the overall site, and a majority of the site is made up of the new nature park that the city of Detroit is planning to create to complement this development site. But 22 acres taking up that amount of land, that's still a lot of property.
Distinct benefits to the community. Located on Detroit's west side, the future development site parcel spans over 22 acres and offers tremendous potential for commercial mixed-use development.
I'm Detroit City Council President Pro Tem James Tate, representing District 1.
Are you Council Member Tate?
This site is very special to us in District 1. It's been there since 1912, I believe. City of Detroit then took over and many iterations, and it's now been closed, unfortunately, since 2018. And residents moved over into the area because they saw this lush, beautiful park and wanted to be a part of that excitement. Unfortunately, over the years, most recently, they haven't had an opportunity to do that. This administration, as well as this council, has now focused and refocused on these areas that have been neglected over time. And residents have responded in droves. And they've come out and said that they're willing to support whatever comes over to this location as long as it truly benefits the community.
This site.
He said something that is so important. These neighborhoods and these residents in these communities that surround these developments and these development sites, they just want to see activity. And of course, they're going to care to a certain extent as to what goes there, but they want to see action. They want to see activities. They want to see shovels in the ground, dirt piled up. They want to see something happen at this site because it's been such a conversation for Northwest Detroit for years, ever since the city of Detroit took ownership of this site, I think either in 2016 or 2018, and they purchased the site from a local church over in that area. But the city has been holding on to this site for closer to 10 years, right? Or since 2018, more specifically. And the city residents want to see something happen. And as long as you're not coming over there, putting something that is going to spew a ton of pollution in the air and things of that nature. They just want to see some type of economic activity, which gives us as developers an opportunity to come to the table. We have a blank slate. And if we could figure out a way to create something that is well-rounded and something that we as a developer can get funded realistically, I think the city and the residents would be happy with whatever comes over in that area for the most part.
With frontage along a busy West 7-mile commercial corridor, is perfectly positioned for growth and opportunity, and is one of a few sites in the city of Detroit with this amount of contiguous available acreage. The goal of the RFP is to ultimately select a well-qualified and experienced developer with the vision and the financial wherewithal to complete a world-class development. Meanwhile,
and here's the challenge: when we're talking about a 22-acre site, there aren't that many developers, specifically that I know, in the city of Detroit that have done a site as big as this. I do know of developers that are capable of executing a project such as this, but have they had the opportunity to do so yet? In most cases, at least with the network that I have of local developers, I'm not exactly sure who I know that has done, once again, a site as massive as this.
the adjacent parcel located south
And
of
so
the development.
I say that to say this may be something that a developer from out of our city puts a play together for, and or maybe partners with a developer from the city in order to bring this to fruition. But this wouldn't be an easy development to accomplish. But I would love to see a local developer actually have an opportunity to take action and put a plan together and really transform the site.
Will become a green sanctuary for the community. The sprawling 97-acre park will be designed for recreation, relaxation, and revitalization.
And so the city of Detroit is working on redeveloping the golf course into a park. So you'll see nature being absorbed and admired. But in addition to that, we're looking for some retail. We need more. We need more development. Community has said they want to see more. They want to see more diverse types of businesses as well within District 1, and this is a great opportunity to merge both the nature as well as the business and retail opportunity at the site within the district.
Thanks to the city's recent investments in improving the Grand River and Lasser streetscape and DTE infrastructure, the groundwork is laid to support this future development and community amenity. This area is anchored by
I think the city has already spent closer to $15 million, maybe $16 million, into the neighborhood infrastructure, specifically Grand River and certain offshoots of that major thoroughway. But he's not lying. He's definitely pointing out the fact that the city has done a lot of work
by some of Detroit's most vibrant and stable communities, including Malvern Hill, Greater Sand Hill, and Brightmoor.
I know that there was a
Beautiful
pandemic
home
that took place. We have since rebounded. We've seen many of our vacant homes become occupied with multifamily units, as well as some of the single families being occupied. Families who are bursting at the seams, waiting to go out and about and be able to enjoy themselves within District 1 in the city of Detroit. So we are a very, very stable community. I have no doubt in my mind that this site will never be in the situation that it was in just a number of years ago. We're already excelling and will continue to do so. But I believe that the legacy of this space is one that reflects the city of Detroit itself. You know, at one point in time, very prideful in 1912 when it opened up, then went through some hard times. And now we're at the point where this rebirth is taking place.
We invite development teams with vision, capacity, and commitment to join us in building a brighter future for Detroit.
All right, so that was a really good summary that we were able to watch from DEGC with regard to this site. Now I want to kind of go through where we can find out more information. If you're really wanting to put together a play, let's look at the low-level details of this RFP and where we can find that at. So now I'm on the DEGC website, and I'm going to scroll down to Request for Proposals. And I'm going to click on real estate and land development. And then from here, I'm going to click on the Rogell development site link there, which in turn brings up the proposal in black and white. And this is where we can really dig deep into the overall details. Summary. It gives us a little bit more detail with regard to the location. And one of the things that the video did not talk about was the amount of daily traffic that crosses this site. Anywhere from 30 to 50,000 cars cross West 7 Mile on a daily basis. That is huge. That is a lot of traffic that is passing this site. And it's also important to note, once again, how close this site is to a lot of major access roads. We got Southfield Freeway, you got Telegraph, Lasser, West 7 Mile, of course. And it's also important to point out the public transit that is in this area, pretty well accessible when it comes to public transit, specifically your DDOT bus lines. For whatever reason, the city of Detroit is not as big on public transit as other cities. I think that is one of the many things that the city of Detroit, from a consumer behavior standpoint, needs to change, and the narrative around public transit needs to adjust, because public transit is really key to thriving neighborhoods and communities and cities. And the infrastructure, specifically DDOT really does a good job with their system and their infrastructure now. 10, 15, 20 years ago, it's a little bit different. I'm talking in 2025, they have apps, they have the ability for you to track where the bus is. They're pretty consistent. They're doing a lot of hiring. They have a decent amount of staff as is. The bus system, in terms of the quality of buses, are reliable. And so I don't think they get enough credit, but that is a huge value add to this site, as consumer behavior, I think, is going to continue to kind of shift from vehicles in the city of Detroit and Motor City to public transit. And the Rogell development site snapshot, once again, this is a pretty massive site that we're looking at getting redeveloped. A lot of frontage on 7 Mile, and it basically butts both Lasher and Berg. And then the next street over to the west is Telegraph. And really quickly, I just want to look at a bird's eye view of the site. As you can see, you got a few bus routes here and stops. Once again, aligning this area. If I were to kind of pull back a little bit, you can kind of see where Telegraph is, where Gratiot is, not too far, M39. Now, this is where I want to point out that even though we're talking over 20 acres of land, I did a little research and reached out to a few folks. Shout out to Marcel. And the city is open to receiving RFPs and proposals for not necessarily the full site. You have the ability to potentially just submit a proposal for a carved out portion of this 22-acre development parcel. But at the same time, the city would love to give this site to one development team and in turn let them execute on a grand vision in one format or another, as opposed to parsing it out to 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 different development teams. But with that said, if you're not in that mindset of saying, hey, look, I love the site, really, really good opportunity, I'm not able to knock out the full 22-acre development, maybe you have a concept in mind that is smaller but really, really strong for this area that the city of Detroit would consider. So when it comes to the different studies that the city of Detroit has already done for us, there is the Rogell Park master plan that we have access to. They did this back in 2018. And this will give us a bit of feedback that they received from the community, some of the work that the city has already done with regard to engagement, which is very, very valuable. When you're putting together a proposal, you may not necessarily know who to talk to from the community side, and you may also not have the ability between now and when the proposal is submitted to understand from a high level what the community needs. And so these types of master plans kind of give us a window into the feedback from the community in one format or another. But it is something to be said. This proposal was done back in July of 2018, and that was pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, things could have changed in one format or another, and it would be beneficial if you have the capacity to reach out to the local community entities and organizations to see if certain things within this schematic design and master plan still align with the community as a whole. But once again, the community would be happy with just seeing some type of action, some type of activity at this site. And I'm pretty sure if you have a good concept, the community would be, in general, open to what you're proposing. But it never hurts to sit down with, let's say, block club captains, the associations in that area. Maybe there's a CDC that you can have access to. Really, really think through what those opportunities may look like when it comes to engaging with the community before you put together a proposal or finalize a proposal just off of looking at the master plan, once again, due to the date with which it was done. With regards to zoning, the site is currently zoned R1. And doing a little research, R1 is single family residential district. So you're probably not going to convert this site into a bunch of single family residences, although that would be a cool concept. Usually when we're talking about biggest and best, the single family development of that site would not necessarily be biggest and best. It would be big. It would be a pretty massive undertaking to create that and convert that site into single family residences. You got a lot of groundwork that would need to be done. You got to run your services, things of that nature. But the city is looking more so for the mixed use, commercial development, residential, multifamily more specifically. And a lot of that would not fall under the umbrella of R1. And so you will more than likely need to get this site rezoned for whatever concept you're considering, if not single family residences. But, at the end of the day, that should be something you are mindful of as you're putting together your timeline within your proposal. So this is an interesting point: confidentiality. Proposals will not be made public. Reasonable precautions will be made to avoid disclosing content and proprietary or confidential information. I think this is obviously a good idea from a developer standpoint, but I am also a little nosy. I want to understand what these proposals entail, who's submitting the proposal, and if I'm not putting together a play, I want to learn from those who are. Proposal required information. This is important to pay attention to. This really gives you the framework of and layout of how your proposal needs to be designed. You got to have a letter of introduction. You got to have a description of the development team, your conceptual description of the proposed development, documentation of your team's equity capacity, which is extremely important. If you're this to cost, I don't know, $100 million, and you need to have some type of idea as to how that capital stack is going to be structured, you're going to have to also have a portion of that be shown as equity from the development team's side. So are you going to go out and raise equity from other partners? You have funding partners such as CDFIs or a traditional bank willing to give you funding. Do you have any letters of support from these different partners? For a documentation of the development team's equity capacity, very important. The city needs to understand, if you understand how to put a capital stack together for a project that could be $100 million plus, depending on what you're proposing. Maybe not that much, maybe more, but they need to understand, not only are you capable of putting together a capital stack to actually build the thing that you're proposing, but they also need to understand what you're projecting from a square footage estimate, and if that is comparable to what they're seeing across the board with other projects in similar scope, things of that nature. So just be mindful of the importance of of putting together section 4 of your proposal. Very, very important. You want to make sure you spend as much time thinking through that as possible, as well as number 5, your financial sources and uses of capital statement for the proposed development that shows all sources of funds to be used for the project, and a line item budget that shows their disbursement. So they're really getting into the details of the financial side of it all. Pro forma, you can get a pro forma from MEDC's website, a really, really good tool that you are more than likely going to be using for a site such as this. You're not going to be able to accomplish something like this without the help of MEDC, from the form of brownfield tax abatement to possibly a CRP grant or loan. Potentially, you may need to gain access to RAP funding if there's going to be another 4.0 RAP funding round by the time that you're ready to close on this project, and things of that nature. Number 7, completed statement of qualifications, including examples of the proposer's portfolio of similar projects and governmental or other contact information that have the most significant experience with the proposer and project. Proposers may attach additional marketing material as they feel appropriate. So one thing that I do want to point out is it looks like there's no limit to how many pages your proposal needs to be. Sometimes you'll come across a proposal, an RFP more specifically, and they're saying, hey, look, you have to limit this to 20 pages. In this scenario, they're like, hey, look, go all out, because this is such a groundbreaking and neighborhood shifting project that they want you to incorporate as much information as possible. So as they're making the determination as to who's going to get this project, they want to be able to digest as much as they can before making such a monumental decision. So evaluation criteria and scoring. The percentages of what the city of Detroit cares about the most. Of course, site development strategy is at 40%. The concept has to make sense. And the bigger, the better, in my opinion. When you go all out for a site such as this, I think the city is really open to work with a developer that is willing to take on such a tremendous challenge if they're able to achieve said proposal and said strategy. But I think the city would be looking for a developer that's willing to take a majority, if not all, of this site and transforming it into something greater. So yes, that definitely is one thing that they're putting a lot of energy and effort into. Of course, they care about the local hiring and local participation due to the benefit it gives Detroiters, whether it be people being able to get into the trades, something new careers. That's very important. Kudos to them for having such a high weight for that line item. 15% for the team. They definitely care about who the team is and if they're able to accomplish said goal, said strategy. Because there have been times where the city has given opportunities to development teams and the development team was not able to accomplish what they were proposing. And so the city is trying their best at avoiding running into that scenario again, which is actually shocking that they only have, I wouldn't say shocking, but only 15% allocated to the proposed team experience. I would have thought it would have been a little bit higher. And then, of course, your financial leverage, capacity, your bid price, all of that is also very important as well. You got the timeline. April 1st is when this RFP was published. You got the due date of June 23rd, interviews July 14th, final selection August 7th, and the notification of winning developers will be August the 14th. So there you have it, folks, a 22-acre opportunity for the right development team to reshape the entirety of Northwest Detroit with the right concept, obviously, but really, really interesting opportunity and really massive opportunity. And I can't wait to see what comes about from the redevelopment of this old golf course into something greater. With that said, I'll see you in the next video. Let me know your thoughts on this site and if you plan on submitting a proposal for it. I'm interested to, if you're looking for any feedback on what you're submitting, I'm your guy. So I'll see you in the next video.